My father couldn't bear to send me off to a political marriage, and forced me to choose a consort within a single day. I looked toward the heir apparent, my childhood sweetheart, only to hear his inner thoughts. I've long been privately betrothed to Eleanor. If the princess chooses me, I can only refuse on the grounds that my father just passed away. I turned to the mild-mannered grand tutor, who had always taken care of me, but then heard him lamenting in his heart, being good to the princess. All these years was only to keep her from opposing Eleanor. If she insists on marrying me, I can only drink the childless potion and keep myself for Eleanor for the rest of my life. Eleanor is my younger imperial sister. I let out a faint sigh, just about to tell Father Emperor that I agreed to the political marriage, when I heard a heart-wrenching voice from the corner. None of the crown prince or the grand tutor are any good. If they don't want to, I do. I turned around and saw that the one voicing these thoughts was none other than the crippled young general who had long been on bad terms with me. His expression didn't change, but inside he was raging like a stampede of 10,000 horses. If my leg could be cured with the 5-colored lingji, I could lead troops into battle at once and never again let the princesses suffer the indignity of a political marriage. 5-colored lingji. I remembered that among the smuggled goods intercepted from the border 2 days ago, there happened to be one. After realizing I could hear other people's thoughts, choosing a consort became much easier. Changle, what are you standing there for? These men are all hoping for your favor and grace. My father's hearty voice came from above, and I silently sighed. He was so confident in me that he didn't even notice that none of the men he mentioned were looking at me. They were all looking at my younger imperial sister, Changshi, standing behind me. Seeing that I remained silent, Father Emperor assumed I could not make a choice, so he took it upon himself to point at the heir apparent. Wei Lan, the heir apparent is your cousin and grew up with you. I can trust him, who knew that before I could even refuse, Wei Lan would kneel first and decline, saying, Your Majesty, my father has only recently passed away, and my period of mourning is not yet over. I would never dare speak of marriage. There was nothing wrong with his reasoning, but Father Emperor was set on protecting me, and only said, You may first be betrothed. My Changle is not that old either. She can wait. Wei Lan's body stiffened slightly, and he still refused to raise his head. That was his way of refusing. At the same time, his inner voice jumped out. To think the eldest princess is secretly giving His Majesty signals. I know she has long been fond of me, but she can't just do as she pleases just because she has His Majesty's favor. Can she? I pointed at myself in confusion. Fond of him for a long time. Me seeing that Father Emperor was somewhat displeased, I hurriedly advised, my cousin and I are related through the same mother. To avoid arousing suspicion among the court officials, it would be better not to make our family ties any closer. Seeing Wei Lan cast me a grateful look, I was filled with mixed emotions. The Emperor nodded repeatedly. Changle makes sense. Then, he pointed at Grand Tutor Yang Qing again. What about the Grand Tutor? Though he's a few years older, I've seen that he treats you very well in daily life. There have been no close relatives bereaved in his family, so you two can marry as soon as possible. Yang Qing pressed his lips tightly together and looked sorrowfully at Changshi. I heard his inner thoughts. Eleanor, I'm sorry, I can no longer stay by your side. Even if I marry the eldest princess, I will still keep myself pure for you. My heart will always belong to you. I got goosebumps from the sourness and shook my head hard. No, this one is too old. Yang Qing looked up at me, seeming unable to believe it. The mischievous princess who used to love pestering him with questions all the time was now openly disdaining his age in front of everyone. Wei Lan was laughing wildly to himself, but on the surface he remained perfectly serious. Even lecturing me, Changle, the Grand Tutor has always treated you kindly. How could you hurt his feelings like this? I let out a cold laugh. Then what about you? Cousin, you and I grew up together. And we've always been close. I'm about to be sent off for a marriage alliance, and yet you're unwilling to be my consort. Wouldn't that hurt my feelings too? Wei Lan's face turned red, then pale, yet he could not refute it. The Emperor sighed, and I heard him say in his heart, Changle takes after my temperament. If I send her off for a political marriage, she will surely be wronged. But these men are blind to a precious pearl and have only made her sad again. my eyes stung with tears. From childhood to adulthood, Father Emperor had always favored me, even when the enemy state named the legitimate princess specifically and demanded a marriage alliance. He mediated from within and gave me a choice. As the eldest princess, I have enjoyed the wealth and honor of the imperial family since birth. It is time I should also devote myself to the realm, I said. Then perhaps I should go for the marriage alliance. As soon as the words left my mouth, Yang Qing frowned first and stopped me. Does the eldest princess know that the tyrant emperor is already quite old? After his death, you would still have to remarry his son according to custom. It is called a marriage alliance, but in truth it is humiliation. You cannot go. Wei Lan also said, cousin, if you don't like me or the grand tutor, then you could simply choose another man from among the others to be your consort. Why make a point of saying something like that in anger? I let out a cold laugh. If I don't go, then it can only be Changshi who goes. As soon as I said this, none of them spoke for a moment. The situation grew deadlocked, and in the hall the only sound was my younger sister's soft sobbing. After a moment, Yang Qing was still the first to grit his teeth and say with righteous resolve, if the eldest princess is pleased, Yang Qing is willing to marry. A sharp knocking sound suddenly rang out, and everyone turned to look. In the wheelchair in the corner sat my legless sworn enemy, Yang Gui Hong. He looked at us with a faint, unreadable expression and slowly said, have you all forgotten that there's still one person here, too? Before I could speak, Wei Lan burst out laughing first and teased, young General Yang is overthinking it. Cousin Changle has ambitions as high as the sky. Naturally, she would never choose someone incomplete as her husband. Besides, you and she are like oil and fire, so it's better not to add fuel to the flames at a time like this. Yang Qing was not as rude as Wei Lan, though he showed nothing on the surface. He still sighed inwardly. What a pity that young General Yang has a pair of broken legs. If he could go to the battlefield, why would my great Zhao need to use women to secure peace? I stared fixedly at Yang Gui Hong, hoping to hear even a little of his inner thoughts. He still wore a sour expression, cold as a stone in a cesspit, when I was suddenly startled by a burst of roaring. Why didn't she choose me? Is it just because my leg is broken? I looked around, and after confirming it was Yang Gui Hong speaking, I couldn't help but feel a pang of bitterness. The reason our relationship was so poor was simply that I was jealous that Father Emperor favored him more than he did his own biological daughter. No matter how much I argued with him, I had never made an issue of his legs. Just because both of his parents died for the country, and he himself went into battle at the age of 9, capturing 3 cities in succession, yet lost both of his legs. The moment my gaze turned to him, he lowered his head and said dejectedly, a great master who returned after wandering the world the other day said that if there were a 5-colored Lingji, he would still do his best to try for me. If my legs could recover, I could lead troops into battle at once and never again let the princesses suffer and marry off for peace. 5-colored Lingji. A few days ago, my deputy general sent me a letter from the frontier, informing me that she had intercepted a batch of rare treasures from the Tartars, among which there seemed to be a 5-colored Lingji. My heart skipped a beat, and just as I was about to speak, I heard a burst of hurried footsteps. When Empress Dowager stormed in and shoved the door open, Changshi's crying grew even louder. She didn't even glance at me, but walked straight past me and took Changshi into her arms to comfort her. Father Emperor tried to smooth things over and said with a smile, you've come just in time. Take a look for our Changle as well. Who would have thought the Empress Dowager merely gave me a faint glance and snorted. She knew full well that Xie was close to Wei Lan and Lord Yang, yet she still included them among the candidates for consort. I know it all. She's nothing more than trying to force Xie into a political marriage. I was stunned. The Emperor was also stunned, because the 2 prospective consorts had been chosen by him after careful consideration. The more the Empress Dowager spoke, the angrier she became. She patted Changshi's tear-rimmed little face, her gaze flicking to mine like a sharp knife. Since childhood, you've had to compete with Xie for everything, relying on your father's favor to look down on everyone. I have never wanted to hold it against you, but now you have actually treated your younger sister's lifelong marriage as child's play. How could I, as her mother, continue to tolerate this time and again? She launched into a rapid, crackling tirade, and though I wanted to defend myself, I had no way to argue back. My heart only grew heavier. The reason Father Emperor favored me wasn't because of anything else, but because Mother Empress only liked Changshi's gentle, obedient nature. Even though Changshi was not born of her, Mother Empress always regarded her as her own daughter. In her heart, I was the outsider. My heart was bitter. I forced my eyes wide open, refusing to let the tears of grievance fall. Although Wei Lan and Yang Qing felt sorry for me, they never spoke up for me. Why had I already done enough? Yet still felt so far away from them. Clearly, when I was little, they had once cherished me like a precious treasure in the palm of their hands, never willing to let me suffer even the slightest grievance. Before Mother Empress gave birth to me, she was jostled by a palace attendant and, as a result, was forced to deliver prematurely. When I was born, my cries were only a little louder than a kitten's mewls. At that time, my Empress mother doted on me. She would also hold me in her arms as I cried day and night, gently coaxing me to sleep. But her closest friend in the palace, Consort Shu, suddenly passed away, leaving her with an infant in swaddling clothes as well. That child was my imperial younger sister, Changshi. My mother, moved by her bond with her sisters, cherished Changshi even more and entrusted me to a wet nurse to care for. The wet nurse had a cheerful nature and raised me to climb trees and play in the water. I also often coaxed Father Emperor into playing with me. And over time, I became a little monkey. Meanwhile, my mother was strict with herself and upheld propriety, raising Changshi to be gentle and delicate, with every gesture and movement more befitting a princess. In order to win my mother's favor, I secretly competed with Changshi, and every time I made her cry in anger, what I got in return was my mother's disgust toward me. Later, as I gradually grew up, I restrained my temper and learned to act in the way my mother liked, going to her to pay my respects. But she didn't even look at me. Instead, she caught Changshi, who came crashing into her arms with a bright laugh, and affectionately tapped the tip of her nose. "Don't run so fast. What if you fall?" Only then did I realize that what she disliked was me as a person. No matter what I became, I could never win even a little of her patience. But now that she was truly scolding me mercilessly in front of everyone, my heart still ached faintly. "Your Majesty, the Empress, that is not quite right." A low voice sounded behind me, like a solid rock, firmly supporting me. Yang Gui Hong, supporting the wheelchair, stood in front of me, his eyes clear. The eldest princess did not choose either of them as her consort, and instead, for the sake of Great Zhao, took the initiative to propose going to marry into another state as a political bride. In this subject's view, the eldest princess is by no means as unbearable as Her Majesty the Empress said. On the contrary, she is the most decisive and resilient woman in this world. Everyone was stunned, as if they had never expected such words to come from Yang Gui Hong, who usually clashed with me the most. Mother Empress was the first to react, stubbornly saying, "Going to marry into another state is her duty as the legitimate princess. If she truly had such intentions, why would she need to choose a consort? Though that Emperor Li may be a bit older men know how to dote on people, and Changle wouldn't be at a disadvantage marrying him." She looked at Yang Gui Hong, who had a sullen face, and retorted, "The two consorts candidates I chose for 11er were both carefully selected by me. If Changle truly refuses the political marriage, how about letting her marry you, you cripple with a broken leg?" The words were truly harsh. Even my ever-gentle imperial father let the smile fade from his face and stared coldly at my imperial mother. Yang Guihong's leg was broken in a glorious way. If he hadn't fought and bled at the front lines at such a young age, how would it ever have been our turn? Those of us with healthy bodies, to sit in the imperial palace and enjoy wealth and splendor. I was so indignant that I was about to rush up and argue back, when I heard Yang Guihong's inner voice. "Forget it, the Empress is right. A worthless loser like me will only drag her down for the rest of her life." I turned to look at him with concern, only to see that he had buried his head deeply, shrouding himself in shadow. Since childhood, he had been better than me at everything. He had once ridden back in triumph on a tall horse, his head showered with flowers along the streets and alleys. But the more proud and self-assured a person is, the less able he is to accept the fact that he is incomplete. Though he showed nothing on the surface, inwardly he began to look down on himself. The Empress Dowager was still self-satisfied, thinking she had said the right thing, when I merely smiled and said, "Very well." I knelt before Father Emperor and bowed deeply. "Your son is willing to form a lifelong bond with General Yang, never to abandon or part from him." For Father Emperor asked me in both delight and worry, "Do you mean it?" At the same time, he thought to himself, "I trust this child, Gui Hong, but this broken leg." I nodded with certainty. "I do mean it." Wei Lan blurted out, "No." He came up to me and said earnestly, with all the good intentions in the world, "Cousin, stop being stubborn. Her Majesty the Empress is right. A cripple like him, if you stay with him, not only will you never enjoy family happiness, you'll spend your whole life listening to gossip and being laughed at. If you truly like me, then he gritted his teeth, I'll marry you." Yang Qing also stared at me with his calm, steady eyes. I heard him say in his heart, "As long as the eldest princess begs me one more time, I am willing to marry her." These two are truly ridiculous. Just moments ago, they were hopelessly in love with Changxi, willing to keep themselves pure for her and defy the imperial decree for her, and now they're the ones getting anxious, impatient. I shoved Wei Lan aside and walked straight toward my future husband. Only then did I realize that his face was already flushed red, and he stood there dazed, not reacting even after I reached him. I bent down and asked him, "And you? Are you willing to marry me?" His hand was gripping his thigh so hard that it was almost turning purple, yet his gaze toward me was filled with longing. "I am willing." His voice was trembling. "I have long admired the eldest princess. To be able to become your consort, I would gladly accept it." I was so overwhelmed by his wolf-like gaze that I fled in a panic. My father, the emperor, was comforted and issued an edict, ordering Yang Gui Hong and me to choose an auspicious day to marry. The Empress Dowager stared blankly at everything, then suddenly seemed to remember something and knelt beside me. "Changle has chosen a consort. If a marriage alliance is arranged, wouldn't it be my Elevenor who is sent?" she begged the emperor, eyes nearly splitting. "Elevenor has been raised delicately by your servant since childhood. She can't endure hardship. That tyrannical emperor has already beaten 2 wives to death. You cannot send my Elevenor to her death." So she knew too of the women sent away for marriage alliances. How many could truly live a fulfilled life? It was simply that she did not love me, and wanted to push me out to shield her precious child from the blade. The emperor was faintly angered. With a sweep of his sleeve, he made up his mind. A princess is not a chess piece, and Da Jiao is not a weak and helpless nation. Even if the world is in turmoil, I will not allow my daughters to spend their lives as bargaining chips for marriage alliances. But General Yang and his wife, who understood Emperor Li's troop deployments and formations best, have already passed away. If we are to set out on campaign, Yang Qing frowned, and for a moment no one spoke. The great hall felt as though it had been plunged into an ice cellar. Yang Gui Hong sat quietly to the side, his hand trembling slightly. The great battle 10 years ago had not only devastated the Yang family, but also the Cheng family, the Ling family, the Du family. Now that their descendants have yet to come of age, Emperor Li has begun to stir once more. I watched as father's back bent even more than before, and I could not help feeling a pang of sorrow. I left the palace gate with Yang Gui Hong, though I had once held some girlish feelings in my heart. Before matters of the state, such feelings were nothing more than a drop in the ocean. The 5-color Lingji had already been sent at full speed by the Deputy General and was halfway there. In a few more days, I would surely see for myself just how powerful it was. Yang Gui Hong had never been one to soothe others, yet as he was to become my future husband, he rarely softened his voice at this moment. "Your Highness need not worry, although the 2 young Generals Du and Cheng are still young. Their determination is no less than mine was back then." He made me laugh, but I also knew he was right. Back then, by his own strength alone, he had forced the violent emperor to retreat 10 li, and the latter never again dared to underestimate our great Zhao. I only asked him, "If your leg could recover, would you be confident of winning this battle?" He looked at me, his eyes dotted with starlight. "Of course." That was enough, I said softly. "Once your Leg has healed, I'll accompany you to the battlefield. He didn't hear clearly because Wei Lan and Yang Qing had doggedly followed along again. Both of them wore expressions of regret and looked at me for a long time, neither daring to speak, yet in their hearts, they were still secretly competing. Wei Lan thought. If Elevenor hadn't spared me embarrassment at the Chenqiu banquet back then, I would probably still be closer to Chang Le. Yang Qing thought. Elevenor's Yonghua Fu is renowned throughout the world. She is accomplished in etiquette, poetry, and discourse. Only a woman like her is fit to be the mistress of the Yang family. Chang Le is naturally free-spirited, and I can't bear to let her suffer. Spared Wei Lan embarrassment. That was my doing. Yonghua Fu, I wrote it. What really made the hairs on my skin stand on end was how all of these things had, without anyone knowing, somehow become Longxi's credit. 5. Those who truly know my nature would never abandon me over a single matter, just as when I had someone deliver the 5-color Lingji to Yang Guihong and pretended that it was sent by Longxi, he did not immediately eat it. Instead, he turned back to find me. This must have been given to me by Changle. I stepped out from behind the screen and smiled at him. You're so certain that I, your mortal enemy, would be this good to you? He didn't argue with me. Instead, he nodded seriously, and I was left speechless again. The wandering master was an old acquaintance of General Yang's. Seeing that we had obtained the 5-colored Lingji, he immediately prepared to administer the needles with great excitement. Half a month passed, and Yang Guihong was already able to stand steadily and even walk with my support for a short while. Half a month later, he was moving about freely, eager to try the knife hanging on the wall, but I shouted him back. Once he could truly pick up a sword, the first thing he did was try out the moves he had learned before. I watched him with relief. That valiant young general had finally returned. I took him to see Father Emperor. Father Emperor was so frightened he nearly collapsed to the ground, tears streaming down his face. He held Yang Guihong and kept murmuring to him for a long time. General Yang had grown up with Father Emperor, supported him in ascending the throne, and then selflessly went to his death for his kingdom. Now Yang Guihong stood before him unharmed, and he finally had the face to meet General Yang and his wife after 100 years. I petitioned Father Emperor to let me go to the battlefield with Yang Guihong. Father Emperor was furious and said that the Li Emperor had originally intended for me to be sent off for a political marriage. If he truly captured me, the consequences would be unimaginable. Father Emperor had always indulged us and had no idea that over the years, I had already planted a covert line in the borderlands. Now that Yang Guihong is in the open and I am in the shadows, with both arrows released at once, our chances of victory are greater. Father has no son. As the eldest princess, I should take up this burden for him. Yang Guihong looked at me approvingly and said that I was the one in this world most capable of standing beside him and walking forward together. Before the expedition arrangements had been settled, trouble broke out again on Changshi's side. She abandoned Wei Lan and Yang Qing, insisting on going to marry into the enemy state. The emperor had a splitting headache. By the time he summoned her, she was already kneeling gracefully on the ground. Though I am a princess, I also wish to help Father Emperor ease his worries. Yet I heard what she was thinking in her heart. I'm Mother Empress's daughter too. Why should all the spotlight go to Changle? After a moment of thought, I said to Father Emperor, why not run 3 plans in parallel? The marriage alliance can be a ruse. The real purpose is to mislead them, and then let Brother Guihong and me strike Emperor Di by surprise. Changshi looked at me suspiciously. Yang Guihong stepped out from behind me, and her eyes widened all at once. Yang Guihong, your legs. In her mind, she was screaming wildly. Yang Guihong is much better than those 2 idiots Wei Lan and Yang Qing. What a pity that slut Changle has once again stolen the lead. It seems I'll have to go back and discuss it with Imperial Mother again. I want Yang Guihong to be my consort too. Meeting her venomous gaze, I looked back calmly, waiting to see what tricks she would play. The decree for the 2nd princess's marriage alliance was issued. Yang Guihong and I were busy every day drawing up march routes and gathering provisions, barely even bothering to eat or sleep. On the day of the wedding, Changshi bypassed Father Emperor and toasted me first with a cup of wine. Elder sister, though you and I are not deeply attached, we are both Father Emperor's daughters. Now that I do not know when I will be able to return, let this cup of wine be your farewell to me." In her heart, however, she was saying, "Drink this cup of wine, and you can go marry off in my place." I sneered inwardly and spilled the wine into my sleeve. Only after watching her get into the bridal sedan chair did I finally let out a slight sigh of relief. Turning back, Yang Qing watched the bridal sedan recede with a look of disappointment. His eyes turning red. I had originally no desire to pay him much mind, but he stopped me. Taking a cup of wine from the side, he said to himself, "You and I were teacher and student. Once, I know I have wronged you. Let this cup be my apology." After saying that, he drained it in one gulp, then poured another cup for me, saying cautiously, "Don't be angry anymore, all right." I stared at him coldly, only to hear his heart say, "I only wish Chang'e a lifetime of peace and well-being." Recalling all the beautiful things from before, I still let out a sigh and drank that cup of wine in one gulp. A wave of dizziness washed over me. When I woke again, I was dressed in bridal clothes and tied inside a bridal sedan chair. It was already dark outside. The sedan curtain was lifted, revealing Wei Lan's smug face. He said, "Yang Qing was right. You really can hear our thoughts." 6. I froze, then remembered why Yang Qing had suddenly wished me well in his heart. It turned out he had long ago set a trap for me. "You and Elevena are both exalted princesses. It makes no difference which of you goes to accompany Yang Guihong to the battlefield." Wei Lan sighed, "Since you can hear my thoughts, you should know that I have her in my heart. To fulfill her, I would give up anything willingly." I glared at him. "This has nothing to do with love. Without my orders, the hidden guards at the frontier cannot rendezvous with Yang Guihong, and a great disaster will surely follow." He stared at me as if I were some monstrous beast from a flood, then burst into loud laughter after a long moment. "You, a powerless princess with no strength to even truss a chicken, if they can listen to you, why can't they listen to Elevena?" Enraged to the point of madness, I tore the ropes apart with my bare strength and slapped Wei Lan hard twice. I have practiced martial arts with General Yang since I was a child, and to avoid drawing attention, I never deliberately showed it in front of others after being slapped. Wei Lan saw stars. He immediately flew into a rage, jumped up, and pointed at my nose, cursing angrily. "How dare you hit me? Do you believe I'll really send you to the tyrant Emperor?" I sneered. "Is this how you treat your benefactor?" That year at the Qianqiu banquet, Wei Lan and the young master of the Zhao family had a falling out over some trivial matters. The Zhao young master had a vile temperament, and in order to ruin Wei Lan's reputation, he deliberately lured the drunken Wei Lan into the dressing room of the princess consort of Qin. The princess consort of Qin was beautiful and gentle, and the prince of Qin cherished her as if she were the apple of his eye. As for himself, he was hot-tempered and decisive. If I hadn't noticed something was wrong and had promptly knocked Wei Lan unconscious and dragged him away, the Prince of Qin might well have beaten him to death. But when I woke up, it was clearly Elevena beside me. Wei Lan was stunned. I said lightly, "You were making such a fuss then that you even pulled out one of my white jade hairpins." He had never once recalled these details in his heart. Wei Lan fell silent. I heard him say to himself that no wonder when he later mentioned that hairpin to Chang'e. She had looked completely bewildered. "Chang'e, he said anxiously, trying to explain himself to me, but I cut him off. "What you can do now is dress up as me and continue with the marriage alliance to keep Emperor Li under control." A moment later, dressed in a light black outfit, I slipped silently into the night. I raced along desperately, and after exhausting 2 horses, I finally intercepted Yang Guihong, who was full of indignation, and Chang'e, who was shedding pitiful tears, halfway there. Only after asking around did I learn that Emperor Li's wedding procession was right beneath the mountain, and this had been the perfect moment for an ambush. Everyone was waiting for me to give the order and attack the Li Emperor from both sides, but there was still no movement. When I lifted the veil, I discovered that the person beneath it had long since been replaced by the ignorant and oblivious Chang'e. The best opportunity had already been missed, yet Chang'e was still sobbing as she clung tightly to Yang Guihong's arm, her eyes fixed on me with resentment. "Why must you always fight me for everything? I'll give you Wei Lan and Yang Qing back. You keep General Yang for me." Okay. The veins on Yang Guihong's temples bulged prominently. It was clear he was already furious. On the battlefield where her parents had been buried, she still had the nerve to talk about matters of love and romance here. I decisively dragged her by the hair out of the tent and made her take a good look at the city under the glow of the flames. These places could all have been our homeland, yet now they are ravaged by the flames of war, and the common people are left homeless. Once I envied you for being able to win the Empress Dowager's affection, but now I am deeply relieved that I never learned even a trace of her cunning and malice. If we return in triumphant victory, I will naturally lodge a proper complaint against you before Father Emperor. If we cannot, then even if I have to drag myself down to hell, I'll drag you down with me. Changshi fell silent. She looked dazedly at the wailing commoners beneath the Li Emperor's carriage and horses, and for the first time, regret stirred in her heart. 7. The escort procession for the marriage alliance rolled forward in full force, heading straight for the Li Emperor's main camp. Meanwhile, our troops had also circled around to the rear. As soon as Wei Lanyi sent me the signal, my hidden guards and Yang Guihong's army immediately moved out, catching the Li Emperor off guard. The battlefield was brutal. Even though we had seized the advantage, casualties were still unavoidable that night. As I was cleaning my wounds, Changshi came. She looked at the wound on my shoulder, and a flash of pain crossed her eyes. I'm sorry. I thought you were only following young General Yang to boost morale, and I became jealous for a moment, but I never meant to actually have you killed. Her eyes were full of confusion. Since we were children, you've been better than me at everything. My qin, chess, calligraphy, and painting are all inferior to yours. Mother Empress appeared kind to me on the surface, but in private she would whip me when we were alone. She couldn't understand why the elegant lady she had painstakingly taught, never neglecting a single day, still couldn't compare to you, this mischievous girl raised by a wet nurse. So she told me to start with the people around you, first the young lord who grew up with you, and then the grand tutor who taught you. She never asked what I liked or disliked, so I could only follow your lead. Whatever you liked, I had to find every way to get. Her hand, coated with the cool medicinal ointment, gently traced circles over my wound. All along, I had been blinded by the hatred Mother Empress instilled in me. Only now do I realize you were always meant to be better than me. Young General Yang was right. You are the bravest and most resilient woman in this world. A drop of warm tear fell into my palm. I knew that everything she was saying now was from the heart. The day I led the army back to the capital with the head of the tyrant emperor, Wei Lan looked at me with complete reverence and dependence. He had finally shown some courage, slaughtering enemies bravely on the battlefield. But he also lost a leg, becoming what he himself despised most, a cripple. Father Emperor personally came to greet us atop the city wall, and beside him stood Mother Empress, looking displeased. Seeing me and Yang Guihong riding the same horse, she gave an almost imperceptible shake of her head and fixed me with a meaningful gaze at Changshi behind me. Changshi lowered her head, trembling at the welcome banquet. Father Emperor drank too much and, holding Yang Guihong's hand, rambled on about something. A piece of meat was added to my plate. Turning around, I saw Yang Qing. Is the eldest princess well? He did not dare to look at me, but I gave him a proper smile. Isn't this princess sitting right in front of you? Perfectly well. You should learn to cherish the person before your eyes, and not let one heart split into two halves. There was also a piece of meat in Changshi's dish. Yang Qing was not as openly biased as Wei Lan. He had always prided himself on fairness. Father Emperor summoned me forward, his eyes full of affection. Chang'e is most to my liking. The last time I read your composition, Ode to Yonghua, it left a lingering sweetness on my lips and in my teeth. Now that you have returned triumphant, how about composing another poem to enliven the occasion? As soon as he finished speaking, there was the sound of cups clinking. Yang Qing stumbled to his feet, staring straight at me. Yang Guihong stood in front of me, lowering his brows. Your Majesty has not yet decided on the marriage date between me and the princess. Father Emperor laughed heartily. You little brat have been saying since childhood that you wanted to marry my Chang'e. Today, I shall grant your wish. Seeing Changshi beside us, he also called her forward, and said kindly, Xie's marriage can also be settled. Lana is brave and martial. Yang Qing is gentle and compliant. Both were chosen for you by your mother. Wei Lan had not attended the banquet, but Yang Qing seemed to have been struck by a bolt from the blue. He staggered and knelt down in the hall. This minister is unwilling. 8 For a moment, Father Emperor's expression froze, and Mother Empress also crushed the lotus seed in her hand. Yang Qing looked at me, his voice trembling. I have long admired the Princess Regent, and in this life, I will marry no one but her. I quietly tightened my grip on Yang Guihong's hand, already worrying about how I would coax him later. As expected, I heard him raging in his heart. After spending enough time with him, one comes to realize that he isn't a stone at all, but a heavy jar of vinegar. When I once chose a husband for Chang'e, you said nothing, the Empress told me. You liked Changxi, and now, when I have bestowed a marriage upon you too, you say instead that you like Chang'e. Do you know the punishment for deceiving the Emperor? Even I had to lower my head before the thunderous wrath of the Emperor, yet Yang Qing was still making a dying struggle. Back then, this minister had not yet seen his own heart clearly. The eldest princess was taught by this minister personally, and I could not bear to. Yang Guihong could no longer stand it and rolled up his sleeves, ready to rush up and hit him amid the chaos. Changxi, dressed in plain white robes, calmly walked out, knelt before the Emperor and Empress, and said softly, "Your daughter does not wish to marry. I only wish to pray for the fallen soldiers in the company of a dim lamp and ancient Buddha, and thus end this lingering life." She had shaken the army's morale and nearly ruined everything. Even executing her publicly as a warning would not be too much, but she was not raised properly. This is not her responsibility alone. The Empress mother lost control and sprang to her feet, immediately moving to slap my face. "Are you going to stop only after you've gotten your younger sister killed?" I restrained her hand and looked at her coldly, the last trace of my longing for love vanishing completely. "I would like to ask the Empress mother instead, must I die before you will spare Changxi, and spare me?" As soon as these words were spoken, even the Emperor father panicked and hurriedly asked me what I meant, tears streaming down her face. Changxi publicly revealed the Empress mother's plan, from taking credit on my behalf for saving Wei Lan, to stealing the Yonghua ode I wrote especially for Father Emperor, from meddling in the selection of my consort, to switching me onto the bridal sedan chair and sending me off for a political marriage. The crowd was uproarious. And only then did I learn that the person in this world who was most jealous and envious of me was actually my own biological mother. Father Emperor was furious. Empress mother had accompanied him for decades, and he had long known she disliked me, yet he could only try to dissuade her over their superficial discord. But open attack was easy to dodge, hidden arrows were hard to guard against. He had not known that the Empress Dowager harbored such despicable thoughts in private. In the end, he issued an imperial decree confining the Empress Dowager to the Chungqiu Palace, which would become her solitary cold palace. As for Yang Qing, he was found to have behaved improperly before the throne and was stripped of his title as Grand Tutor, then exiled to a bitterly cold region. On the day of my wedding to Yang Guihong, the Emperor decreed that I be named Crown Princess. He said he owed me far too much. But I understood that the man before me was the one who had treated me with the truest heart in this world. Before I got into the sedan chair, I was stopped one last time by Wei Lan, who had a lame leg with both eyes red. He said to me only, if I had agreed to this marriage proposal from the very beginning, would we not have ended up like this? But I merely gave him a faint smile and said, from this life on, let us part in peace and wish never to see each other again. I could still hear his innermost thoughts. He truly regretted it, and his overwhelming love for me kept surging forth from within his heart. It was a pity, though, that I neither had nor needed another 5-colored Lingji after hearing the first story above. What are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. Because I fell into the water and was rescued by Murongyu, I had no choice but to enter the princess's residence and become the consort. For the next 4 years, Murongyu treated me coldly, never sharing a bed with me. I thought he resented me for making him a consort and ruining his career, so I used every means to secure him an official position in the court. That night, Murongyu was drunk and finally agreed to consummate our marriage. In the depth of emotion, Murongyu called out the name of his royal sister, Liana. If I hadn't mistaken the drowning person for you back then, you wouldn't have been sent away for a political marriage. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day I was rescued from drowning by Murongyu before the imperial edict of marriage from my father arrived. I took the initiative to request an audience. Father, your child is willing to go for the political marriage. Princess, wake up, princess, hurry, call the imperial physician. The surrounding noise was overwhelming, making my head ache unbearably. The princess is awake. Hearing this familiar address, I was momentarily stunned, then focused my gaze. Isn't this the palace I lived in before I was married? I looked around. The maids surrounding me were all those who had served me in the past. What's happening to me? I asked. Chun Dao beside me wiped her tears as she spoke. Princess, you accidentally fell into the lotus pond, and we were all terribly worried. Fortunately, General Murong came to your rescue. Fell into the water. Murongyu, I was suddenly startled. I actually went back to the day I fell into the water. The maids chattered away beside me, while I quietly sorted out the events of the day in my mind. The princess has always admired General Murong. This is perfect. General Murong saved her today. Who knows, maybe he has feelings for our princess. In the past, whenever I heard such words, I couldn't help but break into a delighted smile. But now, I can only feel the irony. There's no need to say such things anymore. I'm no longer a child. If word gets out, it won't be good for either General Murong's reputation or mine. The maids immediately fell silent. I stood up and had the maids help me change my clothes as expected. This matter will spread throughout the palace today, and tomorrow, for the sake of the royal family's reputation, my father will issue an imperial decree for the marriage. I must go see my father before that. Since it is a doomed fate, it would be better to cut it off from the very beginning. You are volunteering for a political marriage. Father sat at the desk, frowning slightly. Yes, father, at present, our kingdom of Li cannot withstand the turmoil of war, while the states of Yu, Qi, and Wuzi are gradually growing stronger. I believe the best approach is to form a marriage alliance with one of them, thereby deterring the other states. I recall that in a month's time, envoys from Yu will arrive in Li. I am certain their purpose in coming is to seek a princess in marriage. Father neither agreed nor disagreed. Just tell me to go back first, and he will think it over again after finishing this matter. I breathed a sigh of relief and slowly strolled along the long corridor. General Murong, His Majesty is reviewing memorials in the study. Please follow me first. Hearing the eunuch's fawning voice, my heart skipped a beat. It was too late to avoid him. Just as I rounded the corner, I ran straight into Murongyu. He was dressed in black, his expression cold and stern, his brow slightly furrowed as if lost in thought. This demeanor had once captivated many noble ladies in the capital, and I was no exception. He lifted his gaze, and in his eyes, there was a trace of unmistakable impatience as he looked at me. I have matters to attend to today and cannot accompany the princess. General, take care on your way. I bowed to him, then turned and prepared to leave without hesitation. Murongyu seemed somewhat surprised, and even the eunuch beside him widened his eyes, unable to comprehend why the Princess of Anding, who had once been so infatuated with General Murong, had suddenly changed her disposition today. They had no idea that I was no longer the little shadow who used to chase after Murongyu all day long. I've liked Murongyu since I was little. Ever since I could run around the entire palace, I loved following behind him. His always had that icy expression since childhood, treating everyone the same. But I never found it boring. I just kept clinging to him. My elder brother, the Crown Prince, often teased me, saying that in the future, I might very well choose Murongyu as my consort. Back then, I was still young. Though I didn't understand what a consort meant, I agreed without hesitation. I want Brother Murong to be my consort. Everyone burst into laughter, but Murongyu remained expressionless, gently blowing on the steaming tea in his hand. The year I came of age, Murongyu requested to join the army. With a single decisive victory, he repelled the foreign invaders and was granted the title of general. The year he went off to war, I lost all appetite for food and drink, and grew noticeably thinner. When he returned to the capital, I rushed to the city gates to welcome him, but from afar, I saw him walking side by side with the princess. The princess said she had run into Murongyu on her way back from prayers, and that was why they had traveled together. I easily believed him and continued to pester him with a cheeky grin, until that year, when I fell into the lotus pond while playing. Upon hearing the news, Murongyu rushed over and without hesitation jumped into the water to save me. The Murong family held great influence, and my father, the emperor, had long intended for Murongyu to marry a princess. After this incident, my father the emperor betrothed me to Murongyu. 1 month later, envoys from the Yu kingdom came to request a princess in marriage. My elder sister thus became the candidate for the political marriage alliance. After our marriage, Murongyu remained consistently cold toward me. I thought he resented me for ruining his official career. So I tried every possible means to beg my father to arrange an official position for him in the court, but who would have thought it was all a mistake? He had saved the wrong person and I had loved the wrong person. Not many days later, my father sent word that he agreed to let me go for a marriage alliance. This was to be expected. The royal family does not hold on to familial bonds with much difficulty. We are all pawns, just with different uses. Whether it is me or my elder sister who goes for the marriage alliance, there is little difference. My elder sister has a steady temperament and is skilled in diplomacy. Staying at court would allow her to better assist our father in his duties. Father naturally had no objections. Recalling the 4 years of cold neglect in my past life, I shook my head. I will no longer have any involvement with Murongyu. In 5 more days, it will be the annual Kuju tournament of the Li Kingdom. It is also an excellent time for noble ladies in the capital to choose their husbands. Almost all the young men from noble families in the capital will participate in this Kuju tournament. After the tournament, the young ladies will hand their red silk ribbons to the young men they favor. In the past, I always looked forward to seeing Murongyu on such days, and now, only desolation remains. In the blink of an eye, the day of the Kuju tournament arrived. I took my seat alongside the imperial princess, in the viewing stand with the best vantage point. Below us were the noble ladies from various prominent families of the capital. A thin layer of gauze was draped over the stand, shielding the women from any potential disturbance. Luo, which team do you think will win this match? The imperial elder sister took a sip of tea. I glanced up at the 2 teams standing below, led by Shu Sanlang of the Shu family in the capital and Murongyu of the Murong family in the capital. The match hasn't started yet, so nothing is certain. The imperial sister raised an eyebrow, about to speak again, but I cut her off. Sister, there's no need to test me any further. My expression remained calm and indifferent. Murongyu was destined to marry a princess, since I was going for a political marriage. The one who would marry Murongyu would become my imperial sister. I suppose father must have already informed her of this matter in advance. My elder sister let out a soft sigh. I understand. Those who can take the field today are all sons of noble families, agile and skilled, both sides chased and raced, neither giving an inch. Many women in the stands even leaned out to cheer for the young men they admired in the past. I loved such occasions the most, when cheering for Murongyu. No other young lady dared to raise her voice above mine. But no matter how loudly I shouted, Murongyu would never spare a single glance toward the stands. Some things that once passed with a smile now, with the reasons clear, stir a dense ache in the heart. I calmly drank a cup of tea, watching the competition below unfold in full swing. In the end, Murongyu's team came out on top, narrowly winning by a 2-point margin. Let's go. Father is going to reward the members of both teams. The imperial elder sister set down her teacup as the 2 groups came up. They had to pass through a corridor lined with courtesans, so they were all draped with many red silk ribbons. Murongyu had the most, followed by the 3rd son of the Shu family. I took my seat, and when I looked up, my gaze briefly met Murongyu's. He was taken aback for a moment, then turned his face away. Truly avoiding me like the plague. Father first spoke some formal pleasantries, then proceeded to praise each person who had taken the field. Mother smiled as she looked at me and my elder sister, Liana, and Luo. You should also present your red silk ribbons to the young men you wish to commend. In my previous life, I had given this red silk ribbon to Murongyu without a moment's hesitation at that time. The imperial decree of marriage had already been issued. He calmly accepted that red silk ribbon, yet bundled it together with the others he had received and casually placed it in a corner. But this time, seeing Murongyu's expressionless face, I suddenly wanted to see a different expression on his calm, unruffled countenance, so I picked up the red silk ribbon beside me and slowly stepped forward. Murongyu, of course, did not miss this scene and naturally assumed it was meant for him, so she slightly furrowed her brows and reached out to take it, but I suddenly quickened my pace, walked up to the third son of the Shu family, and handed the red silk ribbon to him. Murongyu's hand froze in mid-air. Third son Shu's gallant and heroic demeanor on the field just now was truly captivating, worthy of contending for the title of the #1 warrior of our Li kingdom. At these words, many hearts skipped a beat. Such praise had never been given before, and moreover, who could know whether the princess's words stemmed from the current emperor's own instructions? Ignoring the varied expressions of those around me, I handed the red silk ribbon to Shu Sanlang and then returned to my seat on my own. Murongyu glanced at me faintly, slowly withdrawing his hand from mid-air. At that moment, the imperial elder sister stood up and personally tied the red silk ribbon around his wrist. She did not say a word, only smiled at Murongyu before leaving. I clearly saw Murongyu lift the corner of his mouth in a faint smile. That single gesture felt like a knife twisting in my heart. I clutched my sleeves tightly, just to keep myself from losing composure too badly. So, his icy demeanor all day long, that unapproachable look, was just for me to see. It's just that I'm not the one he loves. Suddenly, I found it all quite laughable. Li Luo, what are you striving for with all your efforts? Even if you act like this today, what does it change? Doesn't it just prove that you still can't forget him? I couldn't quite control my emotions, so I left the gathering early. In truth, I know all too well if I marry for political alliance, Murongyu will surely end up with the royal sister he has always longed for. But wasn't this the very outcome I had originally intended? I married far away, they tied the knot happily, and from then on, mountains and rivers lay between us, never to meet again. So why, then, does my heart ache so deeply? I shut myself away in my bedchamber, refusing to see anyone, no matter who came calling. Half a month passed, and the envoy from you finally arrived. The envoy's first order of business was to state their request to marry a princess from you. My father did not agree immediately. I knew there were still many interests to be negotiated between the two sides, but no matter what, the outcome would not change. That outcome was that I would be sent to marry for political alliance. I calmly accepted all of this and ordered the servants around me to begin preparing the wedding dress. If I guessed correctly, at the formal welcoming banquet 3 days later, the envoy from Yu Kingdom would officially inform my father. The empress summoned both my elder sister and me, instructing us, according to the customs of Li Kingdom, women must visit Tianmen Temple to pay respects before marriage. Since both of you sisters are about to marry, I will arrange for an escort to accompany you there tomorrow. My elder sister obediently agreed, and naturally, I had no objections. And the person chosen to escort us happened to be someone extremely familiar. Murongyu. Whether it was a coincidence or by the Queen Mother's arrangement, I do not know. Greetings, Your Highness. My gaze drifted lightly over him before looking elsewhere. Today, my sister will accompany me to Tianmen Temple. The imperial elder sister smiled gently, with not a single flaw in her words or actions. Murongyu's expression softened considerably, and he even curled the corners of his lips slightly. I didn't look back, turning around to board the carriage behind. Along the way, I clearly heard Murongyu asking after the princess with great concern, even worrying that the carriage, lined with blankets, might cause her any discomfort. Listening to this, my heart felt somewhat chilled. It is a long-standing tradition for a woman about to be married to come to Tianmen Temple to pray for blessings and seek a protective pendant. The imperial princess knelt on the prayer cushion, bowing repeatedly, then took the polished peace pendant from the abbot and wore it on her hand. She then glanced at me. Luo Luo. Come, I complied, stepping forward to kneel and bow. Receiving the peace pendant that belonged to me in my past life, I had prayed just like this, back when I was filled with boundless joy. and love, about to marry Murongyu. Murongyu stood to the side, looking at the piece not in my hand, and suddenly furrowed his brow. General Murong, you may not know yet, but Luoluo is getting married. The gentle voice of the imperial sister rang out. I followed the sound and looked toward Murongyu, only to see a trace of astonishment flash across his face. What? I brushed the dust off my knees and spoke calmly. That's right, I'm getting married. For a moment, the world fell silent. I thought I would see relief or joy on Murongyu's face, but instead, all I saw were his disbelieving eyes and tightly furrowed brow. The imperial elder sister smiled and brought up other amusing topics, effortlessly shifting the conversation. 3 days later, the banquet was held as scheduled. At the banquet, wine cups clinked, and music and dance flourished in a scene of peace and prosperity. The envoy stepped forward to present the state letter, his voice resounding with strength. The Kingdom of Yu wishes to seek the hand of a princess from the Kingdom of Li, to forge a lasting alliance of marriage. This outcome was expected, so there were no significant objections from either the court or the public, and all was harmonious. I sat in the corner, listening to my father's hearty laughter. My eldest princess is already betrothed to the general of our dynasty. Only the second princess, Luoluo, remains. Are you willing to go? In the silence, I stepped forward to the center of the grand hall and solemnly knelt. Your daughter is willing to go. Thus, both guests and hosts were delighted, and it was the best possible conclusion. I watched the lively scene before me and quietly slipped away from the feast. The imperial garden was a good place to go. In the past, whenever I had something on my mind, I would always come here for a stroll. I didn't call for anyone to follow me. Walking alone, I eventually arrived at the lotus pond where I had once fallen into the water. Gazing at the pool of emerald water, a sudden, untimely thought crossed my mind. If I had died in the lotus pond back then, would none of this have ever happened? Thinking this, I couldn't help but take a small step forward. What are you doing? An anxious cry reached my ears. Immediately after, my body was pulled backward. Falling into a solid embrace, I slowly turned my head and saw a sharp jawline. It was Murongyu. I gently pushed him away, my gaze falling upon the palace attire I wore, which was similar to that of the imperial princess. Today was a grand palace banquet, and all princesses were required to wear ceremonial robes of the same regulation. I suddenly let out a laugh. What? Did you think it was the elder princess again, and that's why you're so startled? Murongyu's face was half hidden in the shadows, making it hard to see clearly. So, you've returned as well, he said softly. I looked at him. In our previous life, Murongyu had a very unique aura, so much so that in this life, the moment we met, I sensed something was off. It turns out I wasn't the only one who had been reborn. That's really, really wonderful, I murmured. You should not have volunteered to marry into a foreign land. I was taken aback for a moment, turning to look at him. The journey to you is long and far. Once you go, no one will be able to protect you. If I do not marry into that land, will you marry me? A gentle breeze lifted the stray hairs by his ear, and he fell silent for a moment. In this life, I will not make Liana wait for me again. She suffered far too much in her past life. Hearing these words, I lost all reason and shouted at him. What about me? Then what about the grievances I suffered in my past life? Murongyu's face seemed to carry a hint of confusion, his thin red lips slightly parting. What comparison is there between you and Liana? Didn't you still live in comfort and luxury in the mansion? What more could you possibly be unsatisfied with? His expression held a sincere confusion, as if he were truly questioning me. Asking what more I could possibly be dissatisfied with, I let out a low, bitter laugh, lifting my gaze to meet his. Murongyu, so in your eyes, I'm the one you've neglected for a full 4 years. Am I truly not worth even a shred of your pity? Murongyu frowned slightly. I took 2 steps back, my heart feeling as though it were being crushed by a giant hand. Memories of my past life flashed through my mind, and I suddenly found it all utterly laughable. Murongyu, from this day forward, all ties between us are severed, never to meet again, for all eternity. I pulled out my hairpin, stabbed it fiercely into my collar, and tore the fabric away. Let this be my proof. With those words, I turned and left. Murongyu stood where he was, unmoving. Are you truly decided? as I passed by the corridor, I saw my elder sister standing beneath the covered walkway. From her vantage point, she could just see the spot where we were standing. "Sister, what exactly are you trying to confirm?" I looked directly at her without any attempt to hide my gaze. "Our Luoluo has grown up. You used to have no interest in such matters at all." The elder princess chuckled softly. "I was just curious, that's all." I looked at her calm, indifferent face and said slowly, "He admires you, there's no doubt about that." Who would have thought she would let out a light laugh upon hearing this? "Ha, what use is admiration or not? That doesn't matter to me." I raised an eyebrow slightly. "Elder sister, what do you mean by that?" The princess gently brushed off non-existent dust from her shoulder and said softly, "It means that when you arrive in New Kingdom, don't forget your status and responsibilities." Her expression remained gentle. "Let's go, it's time to return." Thus, the matter of the marriage alliance was settled. I left behind everything in the Kingdom of Li and journeyed far from home. On the day of my departure, the city walls were filled with people who had come to see me off. My father, the emperor, and my mother, the empress, solemnly and gravely told me that this journey, though called a marriage alliance, was in truth a political means to mend the relationship between the two nations. "On this journey, you must prioritize the greater good." I nodded as I turned away. My gaze drifted over the group of people on the city tower. He was not among them. "So be it from now on. The mountains are high and the road is long. Never to meet you again, Murong. You did not come to see me off." At this moment, he sat peacefully in his study, painting. Outside, the gongs and drums clamored loudly. He thought, this must be the ceremony for the princess's wedding procession. So the tip of the pen wavered and wavered before finally touching down. His Majesty had already granted his request to marry Liana. In this lifetime, he should have no regrets. Thinking this, he tightened his grip on the pen. He used to love painting for Liana, but none of those paintings were ever given to her now. At last, his wish has been fulfilled, yet the ink-laden brush fell, leaving a glaring mark on the paper. The face in the painting carried a hint of willfulness mixed with a touch of innocence, clearly not the dignified and graceful Liana. He suddenly remembered that in his previous life, she had always pestered him, wanting him to paint a portrait of her. How had he responded back then? He couldn't recall, but he must have refused. He had only found her noisy and annoying. But now, looking at the face of the person in the painting, he suddenly felt a strong desire to see her. So he rushed out the door and asked the servant where the princess's procession had reached. The servant smiled and said that they had already arrived outside the pass by dawn, and that the procession from the Kingdom of Yu coming to marry our princess was quite grand. He added that Princess Anning, having heard of your skill in painting, sent over some fine Jingju ink sticks. He froze, then shook his head with a bitter smile before turning to leave. "So be it, since things have already come to this, it's too late for anything now." What he loved was Liana. The first thing he did after being reborn was to request an audience with the emperor and ask for a marriage decree. He never cared about military power or official positions, so he easily obtained His Majesty's approval. Only that foolish girl, only she thought he was depressed all day because he had lost his official career. At this thought, he shook his head, not knowing why a peculiar feeling welled up in his heart. Never mind whether it was right or wrong, it was already too late. By the time they reached the capital of Yu, it was already 10 days later. The Kingdom of Yu borders the northern tribes, and as a result, its customs are quite similar, rugged and straightforward, but I find it somewhat difficult to adapt. Moreover, the prince I am to marry is not the second prince from my past life, who was renowned for his gentleness and refinement. Instead, he is a prince with half-tribal blood, Ying Jiao. I pondered this name repeatedly, yet still found no information associated with it in my memory. In my previous life, my elder sister married the second prince of the Yu Kingdom, Ying Mo. According to the information gathered by the servants, Ying Jiao's mother was of Hu descent. During her lifetime, she was favored to such an extent that she even surpassed the current empress, but she passed away due to illness. And this third prince, it is said, is capricious and unpredictable. The choices made in this life are bound to alter the course of the future, but since I am here, I will not be afraid. According to etiquette, our procession must stay outside the capital for one night. after which we will be personally escorted into the city by the welcoming party. But on the morning of the second day, the third prince, Ying Jiao, who was supposed to come to fetch the bride, was nowhere to be seen. The steward was drenched in cold sweat, constantly sending servants to urge him. The servants have already been sent to the third prince's residence several times, but the people there said the third prince got drunk last night. I listened clearly from the side, my expression gradually darkening. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the great Buddha arrived after an hour. Just then, a clamor erupted outside the sedan chair, followed by a clear voice asking, "Is the bride here?" Before I could gather my thoughts, a hand lifted the sedan curtain. Immediately, a face with a hint of mockery was revealed. To be fair, this face is indeed the most beautiful one I have ever seen in my life, perfectly combining the delicate features of the Central Plains people with the striking bone structure of the northern tribes. Yet his carefree and teasing expression instantly ignited my anger. "Your Highness, you mustn't open the curtain, Your Highness," he hummed in acknowledgement, his gaze sweeping over my face. "Such a delicate appearance. I wonder if you can even ride a horse." "Oh, what are you talking about? The bride must ride in a sedan chair. How could she possibly ride a horse?" I was stung by the contempt in his words and waved my hand to lift the curtain. Please have a horse prepared for me, Your Highness. It's just the thing to stretch my limbs." My eyes met his without the slightest hint of evasion. Ying Jiao was slightly taken aback upon hearing this, then curled the corner of his mouth. "Someone, prepare a horse for the princess." A servant brought over a horse and came to help me mount. I rose from the sedan chair, brushed aside the approaching servant, and stared directly at Ying Jiao, who was preparing to mount his horse nearby. "May I trouble Your Highness to help me onto the horse?" Ying Jiao's eyes suddenly narrowed in the long and silent standoff. Neither of us was willing to yield. "I have traveled 1,000 miles to the state of you, enduring much hardship. Your Highness should show some hospitality as the host." Finally, he let out a light chuckle, deftly supporting my waist and helping me onto the horse. "Princess Anding, you truly have a silver tongue." I paid no heed to his words, nudging my horse's flank. "Giddy up. For this marriage alliance between you and Li." Both sides showed considerable seriousness. Consequently, the current emperor of Yu gave Ying Jiao a thorough dressing down. I sat to the side, listening leisurely, waiting until the emperor had finished scolding the man before taking a sip of tea to soothe my throat. "Father, please calm your anger. I believe the third prince did not act intentionally. He was merely influenced by those unsavory companions." The emperor narrowed his eyes, glancing at me before turning his gaze to Ying Jiao. "I find this reasoning sound. Today, you will disband all those disreputable people in your residence." Ying Jiao finally showed a bit of a reaction upon hearing this, lifting his eyelids to glare at me with a hint of gritted teeth. "Yes. Your Majesty is wise." I smiled with a hint of amusement. By the time all the ceremonies were completed, dusk had already settled in. I dragged my weary body to the bed and sat down, unwilling to move a muscle. Chundao helped me remove the heavy phoenix crown from my head, gently massaging my scalp. "That third prince is really something," I heard her muttering softly, and comforted her. "This is nothing yet, just wait and see what comes next." As night fell, the clamor in the front courtyard of the prince's residence finally subsided. Ying Jiao walked with steady steps, his eyes clear and bright, showing no sign of having drunk. Seeing him enter, Chun Dao brought over the nuptial wine without a word. I picked up the wine cup and was about to bring it to my lips when he suddenly loosened his grip, and the cup fell to the ground. I caught it in one swift motion. "Your Highness is quite skilled." His words carried a deeper meaning, and only then did I realize he was testing me. "Not at all. I am but a frail woman who cannot even take care of myself," I said with a light-hearted tone, handing the wine cup back. He chuckled softly. "The princess enjoys telling little lies." We were standing so close that the wine in the cup moistened my lips. "Not as much as Your Highness, who arrives late after a night of drinking, yet carries not a trace of wine on you." Ying Jiao was taken aback for a moment, then raised an eyebrow. Tonight was supposed to be the wedding night, but it was clear that both Ying Jiao and I had our own concerns, and neither of us was in the mood for it. Since he didn't bring it up, I was more than happy to enjoy the peace and quiet. Recalling Murongyu's cold demeanor from my past life, I actually find Ying Jiao's foul temper much more endearing. At least he wouldn't leave someone hanging there, ignored and neglected. With these thoughts, I fell into a deep sleep. When I woke up the next day, Ying Jiao was no longer by my side. I learned from the servants in the mansion that Ying Jiao usually gets up early for morning exercises and often goes horseback riding in the suburbs. It doesn't matter to me, and I can't be bothered to care what he does, as long as he doesn't come looking for trouble with me. The congratulatory gifts from the relatives have all arrived, and I've sorted and organized them before sealing them in the storeroom. After arranging everything, I looked up and saw him standing under the corridor, leisurely crossing his arms. You really worked hard all morning. I've never liked dealing with these things. I glanced at the messy storeroom. I can see that. He raised an eyebrow, humming a tune as he walked away. In my past life, I often handled these matters, yet no one ever said a word of thanks, not even Murongyu. I shook my head, forcing myself to stop dwelling on the past. Marrying a prince with a notorious reputation for being a playboy had one advantage. With him as a foil, no matter what I did as the princess consort, I never stood out too much. Morning greetings. I'm sorry, but the third prince is unwell today, so we must beg your pardon for not attending together. Visiting card. I'm sorry, but the third prince is unwell again today, and I must stay home to attend to him. In short, I had nothing but free time. Ying Jiao was simply pure arrogance, refusing to be disciplined, but I wasn't having any of that. If he wanted to act tough, I could be even tougher. Yet, strangely enough, as time went on, we actually managed to live in harmony. Chundao had once privately complained, perhaps this is a case of a demon meeting a demon. Before the princess came of age, she was even more troublesome than the third prince. I chatted for a while about some amusing childhood stories, which happened to be overheard by Ying Jiao as he returned to the mansion. What are you talking about? He asked casually. Discussing what to make in the small kitchen tonight. Ying Jiao chuckled lightly. There's a banquet in the palace tonight. Get yourself ready and come with me. I stopped cracking sunflower seeds, wondering in my mind what kind of banquet could make even the unrestrained Ying Jiao obediently attend without trying to get out of it. It's a family banquet, he added. Both the second and fourth sons have returned, Ying Mo and the fourth prince, Ying Wei. So I freshened up and followed him to the palace. Though it was called a family banquet, many of the court officials' female family members were also present. I suspected there was an intention to find a suitable match for the fourth prince. Facing the curious or scrutinizing gazes along the way, I calmly took my seat. Among these looks were curiosity and disdain, all of which I took in one by one. You don't seem to get along very well with your second and fourth brothers. I took a sip of tea. Ying Jiao looked at me upon hearing this. Look at the expression in their eyes. It's practically shouting. I'm about to start giving you trouble, I said casually. Scared. Hearing that, I exploded. Afraid. He propped his chin on his hand, his amber eyes tinged with a hint of teasing. All right, I know you're impressive. After the emperor arrived, the banquet officially began. Just as I expected, after 3 rounds of drinks, someone inevitably came crashing in. Oh, so this must be my third sister-in-law. Ying Wei walked over, holding a cup of wine. I nodded in acknowledgement. Third sister-in-law. In our Yu kingdom, we only respect true strength. Beauty alone is not enough. Come, drink this cup of wine, and let us see the courage of the princess of Yu. The words were spoken with such force that the surroundings instantly fell silent, all eyes turning in this direction. Anyone could see the undisguised malice in Ying Wei's words, and what he offered was no ordinary wine. It was the kind of strong liquor commonly drunk on the frontier. I remained seated, unmoving, and did not take the cup from his hand. Instead, I picked up the wine glass before me and drained it in one gulp. Your Highness. As you wish. Ying Wei's expression turned somewhat unpleasant. He was caught in an awkward position, neither able to advance nor retreat, so he had no choice but to down that cup of strong liquor himself. The princess and my third brother are truly a perfect match. He didn't address me as his third sister-in-law, but instead called me princess. That phrase, a perfect match, made me feel inexplicably uncomfortable. I have a suspicion and glance at Ying Jiao beside me. His gaze is like a leopard, ready to pounce. To think the princess of the Li Kingdom's manners are so. Before I can speak, Ying Jiao mercilessly cuts him off. Ying Wei, get lost. Don't force me to break one of your legs on a day like this. You, I raised an eyebrow. All the ladies are watching. Fourth brother, it would be best not to lose your composure. Ying Wei stormed off with a flick of his sleeve. I could almost guess the reason behind the brothers' sharp confrontation. After all, the second and fourth princes are born of the same mother, while Ying Jiao's birth mother is a Hu person, not to mention anything else. Although the state of Yu does not exactly look down on the Hu people, there is still a certain degree of disdain. The emperor's particular favoritism toward this son with half-Hu blood would naturally provoke dissatisfaction among the other princes. As for Ying Jiao, I glanced sideways at him. Is he really as carefree as he appears on the surface? Halfway through the banquet, Ying Wei suddenly announced that he had trained a troupe of dancers to perform for the emperor, but as they drew closer, it became clear that every single one of these dancers was a foreigner. If the earlier incident was merely meant to put me in my place, then this troupe of dancers was a direct and unmistakable provocation. Hu Ji is skilled in dance. I wonder if third sister-in-law, having come from afar, might also know a thing or two about it. As soon as these words were spoken, all eyes in the room converged on me. Ying Jiao shifted slightly, about to rise, but I swiftly pressed down on his shoulder. Fourth brother is quite right, I do indeed know a thing or two. So I softly borrowed a long sword from the guard and stepped into the center. I swung the long sword with such force that the wind roared, the tip of the blade grazing the hem of Ying Wei's robe several times. If you want to see, I'll let you see your fill. When the sword dance ended, Ying Wei's face had darkened to the color of a pot's bottom. Hu women excel in dance, southern barbarians in watercraft, northern tribes in horsemanship and archery. Each person has their own strengths. Those without any strengths are mostly foolish, and particularly fond of stirring up trouble. I smiled. Don't you agree, fourth brother? Ying Wei's expression grew even more unpleasant. The emperor spoke to smooth things over, and the banquet was able to continue. Ying Jiao sat in his seat, his gaze toward me carrying a hint of something more. I met his eyes without flinching. We're on the same boat now, so we should stick together, shouldn't we? He suddenly smiled, narrowing his eyes like a lazy lion. From now on, I will have to rely on you a great deal, princess. I secretly rolled my eyes. After that banquet, my relationship with Ying Jiao grew much closer. He told me about his mother. My mother was a Hu, a jewel of the Wutu tribe on the grasslands. Like you, she was also a princess sent for a marriage alliance. I now understood why Ying Wei's words carried so much hidden meaning. There was this connection between us. The emperor cherished her deeply, but favored women in the palace often do not live long. So, as he spoke these words, his usual frivolity was gone, replaced only by a somber and lonely expression. I didn't know how to begin, so I just patted his back. Ying Jiao suddenly turned around, looked at me, and said, "You know, you're very much like her. I felt it from the moment I first saw you." I was taken aback for a moment, then shook my head with a wry smile. "In what way? You're both incredibly stubborn people who refuse to admit defeat." I pondered this statement carefully, and indeed, it wasn't wrong, not necessarily, though, sometimes, refusing to admit defeat just isn't an option. I laughed at myself mockingly. Ying Jiao fell silent, simply gazing quietly at the moon on the horizon. I thought for a moment, then began to hum a melodious little tune. It was a song my childhood nanny used to hum. She said that when I was little, I was quite restless. But whenever she hummed this tune, I would settle down and fall asleep peacefully. Ying Jiao had his eyes closed, but I could sense he was listening intently. After I finished humming, neither of us spoke. We each went our separate ways. After spending so much time together day after day, I actually started to think that Ying Jiao wasn't such a bad person. He didn't strike me as a prince, but more like a swordsman from the Jianghu. Every move he made carried a sense of freedom and ease. During his leisure time, he went out less often and spent more and more time staying in the residence. I found it increasingly natural to have him do things for me. I could feel our affection for each other warming up subtly. Such a simple life felt more like a married couple living together than the cold mansion of my previous life. With affection established, consummating the marriage was a natural progression. Whether in my past life or this one, my experience in this area has been almost non-existent. Murong. You treats me as if I were an object, but Ying Jiao would softly call my name, over and over again. I love you, he said, from now on, I will always be good to you. When I mentioned this later, he blushed suspiciously and said I must have remembered it wrong. Then he walked away with his arms and legs moving in sync. I giggled behind his back. If only life could remain this peaceful and happy forever. Unfortunately, tranquil days are always shattered without mercy. The day Murong Yu arrived happened to be the winter solstice. He brought crucial news. The state of Qi had conspired with Wuzi to launch an invasion. Now, Yu and Li are allies, and if Li were to fall, Yu itself would be in grave danger. Thus, the Emperor of Yu immediately ordered reinforcements to be sent to Li. The general appointed to lead the troops was Ying Jiao. My heart was suddenly wrenched into my throat. This invasion by Qi Wu is massive in scale. If we cannot repel them in one fell swoop, both the Li kingdom and the Yu kingdom will become fish on the chopping block. With my heart in my throat, I ordered someone to pack Ying Jiao's luggage. Don't worry, I've fought many battles, big and small, in my life. He smiled and patted my head. I frowned, unable to speak. The situation was urgent, so we had to set off the very next day. Unable to sleep all night, I got up and went to the garden. Who would have thought? In the garden, I ran into Murong Yu, who was also sleepless. That day we met in a hurry. We only saw each other once and did not have a chance to speak. He stood there, the moonlight falling on his profile. You've lost some weight. I was taken aback, never having felt that I had grown thinner, and so we faced each other in silence. I was surprised to find that, now that he stood before me, I no longer felt the same stirrings I once had. All the past events seemed like a dream. Go back early. I said this, then turned and left. Murong Yu didn't make a sound, watching me as I departed. After returning, I found Ying Jiao leaning against the doorframe at my room's entrance. Why are you awake? I asked. I woke up from a nightmare and found you weren't here. He lazily rested his head on my shoulder. I found it somewhat amusing. What kind of nightmare was it that scared you awake? He scooped me up and carried me into the house. I dreamed you ran off with some other man, and it made me furious. Hearing those words, my heart skipped a beat, thinking he had seen something, yet the courtyard clearly bore only my footprints. Moreover, Ying Jiao's face showed no sign of anything unusual. I felt slightly reassured. Perhaps it was just a coincidence, and so I fell into a deep sleep within his warm and broad embrace. The next day, Ying Jiao set out on his mission. I sat idly in the mansion, feeling as though Ying Jiao had taken all the liveliness of the courtyard with him when he left. Chun Dao comforted me, saying that with Murong Yu and Ying Jiao on the battlefield, this war was sure to be won. It was only then that I began to sense something was amiss. How did Murong Yu accept the position of general after marrying the imperial sister? Before I left, there were only half a month left until Murong Yu and the imperial sister's wedding. Just as I was wondering, a servant respectfully handed me a letter from the Li kingdom. Your Highness, this is a letter from Princess Anning of the Li kingdom to you. In the blink of an eye, more than a month had passed since Ying Jiao left. The war was urgent, and the journey was long, so the news I could receive from the rear was very limited. Thus, I waited day after day until the early spring branches began to sprout buds. I received the first report of victory. Seeing Ying Jiao's familiar wild cursive script, I finally felt at ease. The letter said all was well, that he had won his first battle, and the Chiwu army had retreated 60 miles. Inside the envelope was a bundle of Li country's unique Eve incense, which smelled wonderfully fragrant. Chun Dao teased me with a smile. Your Highness, you never forget the princess, no matter the time. Receiving such good news, I felt a wave of relief wash over me, not only because the kingdom of Li was temporarily preserved, but also because Ying Jiao was safe and sound. Perhaps in a little more time, we will be able to crush the enemy forces, and the third prince will return safely, Chun Dao said. Another maid chimed in. Otherwise, our princess stares at the east every day, and she might just bore a hole through the wall with her gaze. Ying Jiao truly possessed the courage to stand against 10,000 on the battlefield, and he was well versed in military strategy, far from an ordinary man, and so, We waited for another 2 months, with occasional letters from Ying Jiao arriving in the gaps. The last line of every letter was, "My heart yearns to return like an arrow." 2 months later, news arrived of the great victory by Li and Yu over the Qi Wu army. Along with it came the news that Ying Jiao was severely injured and unconscious. The matter was of great importance, and such words could not be spoken openly, so only my elder sister secretly sent me a letter. She asked me to go to the kingdom of Li, as I was once a princess of Li, and since Ying Jiao was also in Li, she believed the emperor of Yu would likely grant permission. So without a moment's hesitation, after stating my reasons, I immediately set off with my men, spurring our horses to full speed. But I never could have imagined when I arrived after 10 days of traveling day and night. What I saw was Ying Jiao, alive and kicking, coming to greet me without a word. I dismounted and threw a punch. Ying Jiao let out an "ah" and quickly grabbed both of my arms. "Ying Jiao, do you have any idea how scared I was?" I was trembling all over with anger. Ying Jiao immediately pretended to dodge after I punched him a few times, not too lightly but not too heavily either. I ran out of strength and threw myself into his arms. "You scared me to death," I choked out. Ying Jiao stroked my hair and just like that, holding me, he carried me all the way into the capital. It wasn't until I entered the princess manor of my royal sister, Princess Anning, that I still hadn't grasped what had happened. Ying Jiao led me to a room and stopped in front of it. "Luo Luo, Princess Anning didn't lie to you, but the one who was severely injured and unconscious wasn't me, it was Murongyu. I knew that if I used Murongyu's name, you might not come." My elder sister spoke softly, "So I made a deal with the third prince. It just so happens you haven't returned to Li Kingdom in a long time." My elder sister seemed to have changed a great deal compared to before. She had always been gentle, amiable, and never gave anyone cause for complaint in her dealings with others, but now, this sharp and unyielding demeanor is more like her true self. "The imperial physician says he doesn't have long to live. Even in his unconscious state, he kept calling your name. These past few days, he has been kept alive only by medicine. Luo Luo, he knows he was wrong." I was caught completely off guard by these sudden words. "If I'm not mistaken, he has regretted it since the day you set off for the marriage alliance." Regret, Murongyu, it sounded like the biggest joke I had ever heard. Anyone in this world might regret missing me, but Murongyu never would. The imperial elder sister shook her head with a smile. "People, they can never truly see themselves clearly. Come, I'll take you to see him once. This is what I owe him." I understood what she meant by owe. The imperial elder sister's ambitions were far from as simple as they appeared on the surface. After I left, she did not choose to marry Murongyu. If Murongyu did not become the imperial consort, he would remain a general. "Do you want to be emperor, sister?" I looked at her. She walked with measured steps, not even pausing for a moment upon hearing the words. "Would it be any disadvantage to you if I became emperor?" The implication in these words was all too clear. "Go ahead." This is what I promised him. The door opened, and I stepped inside. Murongyu lay on the bed, his face as pale as a sheet of paper. My heart twisted with a heavy ache. As if sensing something, he slowly lifted his eyes. "You've come." The words were spoken so softly, so gently, that I feared I might shatter him. "Do you still resent me?" He looked at me, a faint smile curling at the corner of his lips. I shook my head. His gaze gradually drifted into the distance. "Why not? Why not keep hating me? At least that way, you'll still remember me, won't you?" I didn't know how to respond. The resentment I once held for him had now turned into confusion, leaving me at a loss. He pulled a folded piece of paper from under his pillow, struggling to reach out and hand it to me. I took it and saw a tear trickle from the corner of his eye. "Luo Luo, this is what I owed you from before," he said. "Let's return what we can." Bit by bit, I closed my eyes, feeling that too many things in this world were utterly absurd. If only this apology and compensation had come a little earlier, just a little, I would have thrown caution to the wind and held on to him. But it was too late. I already have someone who loves me, and someone I love. I can't accept this anymore. I knew it was a painting, something I had desperately wanted in my past life, but not anymore now. Neither Murongyu nor I are the same as we once were. Murongyu's outstretched hand fell back down. Very well, To see you one more time is already a grace bestowed by the princess. After meeting Murongyu, I immediately said I had to leave. Seeing this, my elder sister sighed, but she didn't try to persuade me to stay any longer. My elder sister had used some other price to convince Ying Jiao to let me come here, and it seems this price was greater than I had imagined. Before boarding the carriage, I suddenly spoke up. Elder sister, he once liked you so much. Did you ever like him? Elder sister's expression remained indifferent. In my eyes, there are only two kinds of people, those who can be used, and those who cannot. I understood in my heart and asked no more. Thus, the carriage followed the same path back the way I had come. With Ying Jiao and I sitting together on the carriage seat, I saw him give some instructions to the guard beside him, so I spoke up to ask, "Find a miracle doctor for that kid, don't let him die." I looked puzzled. Just kidding, if he dies, wouldn't he become some kind of white moonlight or cinnabar mole in your heart? I absolutely won't allow that to happen. Ying Jiao had a blade of grass between his teeth. You're talking nonsense. That's simply impossible, I said helplessly, but he suddenly grew serious. On the battlefield, he saved me once. If he hadn't cut off that poisoned arrow, I would have died. He said, "I am the one you love," and he didn't want to see you sad. Ying Jiao spoke, his expression turning displeased again. He said all the good and bad things, truly cunning, but I smiled, gently touching the scars large and small on his body. Alright, let's go home. After hearing the two stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.